This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Ride hard and I'll make it by dawn. Cross the Brazos and Waco. I'm safe when I reach San Antonio. He glanced back over his shoulder.
Well, welcome back to the Waco History Podcast. We are here today to talk about a long-standing pillar of the arts community here in Waco, and that's Waco Civic Theater. And so Kelly MacGregor, the director, or the executive director or director?
The interim executive director.
Interim executive director of Waco Civic Theater is here to talk about the long history of the Waco Civic Theater, which dates back to when, Kelly?
1925. We are 99 years old. We're just about to celebrate our 100th birthday.
Well, I'll start with the current stuff. I mean, what are the plans for the 25th for next season for the 25th?
Well,
or for the 100th.
For the 100th anniversary, we are going to announce our new season at our Curtain Up Gala fundraiser on April 12th.
You wouldn't want to do it here?
I could do it here. Yes, I would let the whole cat out of the bag.
Well, that's exciting. So, any teaser? Could you tease it?
I could tease it.
Okay.
We are going to be bringing back things that you've seen in the past, that we haven't had on our stage for a while, and one of those things just might be the author starts with an S and rhymes with Shakespeare.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Even for just a historian. I'm no theater expert or don't know much about literature, but I can get that one. So
I think you could. Yeah, I gave you enough clues for that one.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yes, we're really excited about that one. That'll kick off our season.
Okay.
And then we'll be having big titles, Disney titles. Titles that have not been produced by community theaters yet.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
And very, very popular Broadway shows. So we're very excited.
Okay, so some ambitious things planned for the centennial. Well, that's wonderful. Well, let's go back then to the history part and talk a little bit about some of the history. I don't know that much history about WCT, and just maybe some things that you've learned about the history of it, and give us kind of some background. I mean, it's been here more than half of Waco's history, so it's pretty remarkable. The modern history of Waco has been marked by a civic theater. So talk a little bit about the history of it.
Sure, I'd love to. I'm still just doing I've been in a shallow dive at this point, but because it's been 100 years, there are so many things that we have yet to discover, and we're having so much fun uncovering all kinds of interesting things that have happened over the last 100 years in this little theater. And that's where it began. In 1925, it was called Waco Little Theater. And the person that started it, we've discovered, was Mrs. Jean Fort. So over there across from Live Oak, and now I believe it belongs to Live Oak, is the Fort House and Museum. So that's tied very much to Waco's history. And so William Fort, I believe it was his son Foster Fort who married Mrs. Jean Fort. So she was the one who began Waco Little Theater in 1925.
Okay, so Kelly and I were looking out the window earlier, and she was saying, "Is that the Fort House?" To look at where the founder. I did not realize that. Yes. And so when the theater started, what did you find out about the early kind of years of the theater?
So the early years, it lasted about 11 years before they took a bit of a hiatus in the 30s. Of course, just before the war and then during the war, they took a little break. A lot of things took a little break, of course. But they had about 11 years where they were the Waco Little Theater and putting on plays in town. And then we discovered that once the war was over, in the 40s, Paul Baker, who was associated with Baylor Theater and a very big name in theater training, in training actors, and in designing theater spaces, Paul Baker decided that he would reassemble the members of Waco Little Theater and begin Waco Civic Theater. So in the 40s, he began that. In the 50s, he approached Madison Cooper, among other people who would give the financial support to build the building that we have today. And we have discovered, with the help of the Cooper Foundation participants or employees over at the Cooper House, they found our original blueprints.
My goodness.
Yes, for the building. So they were drawn up in 1957. And so now Studio Gallery has framed 2 of them for us for our lobby. And so you can see the original blueprints of Waco Civic Theater. They found them in the Cooper Foundation's attic.
That must be, I've been over that into your building, and that must be recent that they put the blueprints up.
Well, they're still at the framer right now.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Studio Gallery is working on it for us.
I haven't seen it. That's an amazing find.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, now, where were they doing productions as when they were Waco Little Theater? Where were they doing productions in the 20s?
So they were a bit nomadic.
Okay.
And now this is where my knowledge I've failed to remember. They had a theater building that this was several months ago. I looked it up and where it was in town. And now I can't remember, but they had a theater building and it burned to the ground.
Okay.
So then they went back to nomadic existence again and presenting their offerings in different places in town. And that's when Paul Baker stepped in and was like, "You need a home."
Yeah, and I wonder if they did performances at because I guess in the 30s, Waco Hall was there by then. I wonder if they did like Waco Symphony has traditionally used Waco Hall. I wonder if they did productions on Baylor's campus.
Yes, they probably did. Any place that there was a space that they could use. And because Paul Baker had very close ties, of course, with Baylor Theater, he discovered them from somewhere. So
yeah. Well, Paul Baker, a legend at Baylor. I mean, some of his students. I've heard a lot of Paul Baker stories.
Yes,
pretty amazing individual.
And I actually brought a book with me.
All right.
It's in my bag. I'll have to grab it. But it is from the made in the, let's see. The copyright is 19. Well, I'm going to find it. But this book is called Theater and Playhouse, and it was first published in 1984. But this is an illustrated survey of the theater building from ancient Greece to the present day. So this has illustrations of all kinds of theaters from all over the world, innovative designs, the interiors, the structure of them. And lo and behold, Little Waco is in this book. Yes, Waco Civic Theater, and their original drawings from 1958 is in this book. And we made it. We made it in a survey of all the theaters. And this is Paul Baker's design.
That is amazing. So talk about the elements of that design. And of course, the fact that you're still doing productions there, and it still works as a space. I mean, what is it about that design that was unusual or made it kind of stand out?
Yeah, he was an innovator in all aspects of theater. And what he designed was a versatile space that you could put together any sort of production, whether that was in the round, whether that was a proscenium, whether you could build out a thrust into the audience. He built a very versatile space. And back in the 1960s, the British Institute of Royal Architects, am I mixing that around? They actually awarded it as one of the 3 top most innovative designs of theaters of its kind in the United States, because it was so incredibly versatile. He was very specific about the type of chair that he wanted the audience to sit in, and he wanted everyone to sit in a director's chair because he felt that audience as participant or audience as a part of the community of this play that was being put on was a very important aspect of it. And so, the original chairs were little folding director's chairs, and you got to sit in that while you were watching the play.
That is funny. We desire more comfort, I would think now.
We do. Chairs. We like we don't want to sit in a couple of sticks with a piece of fabric, but
but what a cool idea that would be. And you said, now what year were those designs drawn up? You said the designs for the new building were in the 50s?
57, yes.
57.
So Madison Cooper funded it, and I don't think he ever got to see what he had created.
That's one of the things I was thinking about is when he passed away. And I was also thinking about, you think, well, why isn't it downtown? And then you think, well, that's after the tornado.
Right.
And where they were doing investment. That really would have been out on the outskirts of town where your building is now. Now it's in the center of development of Waco, but wouldn't have been at the time.
Yes. So again, even that was, I guess you would feel it would be more of a destination to go to as well. It'd be a little special to head that way. So right now we'd love to restore it to the way that Paul Baker had it. There were some changes made over the pandemic that we would love to bring it back to Paul Baker's incredible design, one that won awards and attention and publication. And it's such an interesting and versatile space. We'd love to make it that versatile again.
What else did you learn about maybe some of the early productions?
So one of the first productions, now let me see if I can get my facts straight on this. One of the first productions in that space, it was called The Circle, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a tie to Pat Neff's daughter. And I can't remember how now. Okay. I think it was either she was in the production or her someone was directing it. Anyway, it's still like that Baylor and Waco Civic Theater connection were pretty crisscrossed all the time.
Yeah. Yes. That has to be, now we have a much more diversified arts community, but I would think particularly back in this early period we're talking about, there had to be a lot of crossover.
Yes.
In the arts community between Baylor and the city. Yeah.
And then there's lots more connection to Madison Cooper as well. So one of the most popular, by far, one of the most popular theatrical productions that has ever been produced over there was a play called The Streetwalker's Hamlet, a Madison Cooper story. Okay. And, Madison Cooper's Saronia, Texas. So they took Madison Cooper's book or the novel that he wrote before he passed away. So he wrote it in the early 50s, I believe. And they made it into a play, and they sold show after show after show after show. And so I was looking through a Facebook group, Waco, Texas History and Pictures. And there was a picture of someone named John Dennis Anderson's thesis project in the 70s, and then he revived it in the 80s, and it was that play. So I contacted him, and he said, I said, can I have a copy? May I read it? And he said, I'd be happy to send you a copy. He said, it's probably inappropriate for today's audiences. We would have a little bit of content in there that lots of us would have problems with, of course. But he said he's adapted the story into a one-man show about Madison Cooper, and then he's further adapted that into a play with 4 actors. So he's going to send that to me, and we'll see what we can do with that.
Yeah. So I've had Dr. Anderson on the podcast, and he's come in and talked about his project. And of course, what I would love to see is a restaging of that would be extremely interesting.
I think so too. And I think that Waco would be here for it. I think they would really enjoy that.
Well, you've got to find something to condense and digest Saronia for a modern audience.
That's a lot to digest.
Yeah, and I think John Dennis Anderson has done a good job of doing that.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to read it.
That's great. That's great. The records you talk about as you went to kind of learn information. How are the records on the theater? Do you have playbills, other things like that from the past?
Yes. So we have several things at the theater that in the past, maybe since the 2000s, early 2000s, late 90s. So I've looked through some old playbills, a lot of pictures. But most of the things are at the Texas collection. And so my husband has actually had a look at most of those things that we've thus far got to. So there's quite a lot of content there. They're box after box. And so we've only, as I said, shallow dived so far. But we've had some beautiful pictures that we've encountered. The minutes from all of the board meetings. We've kind of like glanced through some of those. There were lots of arguments over season selection.
Oh, yeah. I bet. Yeah.
it never changes. We all have strong opinions as to which stories we want to tell. And of course it's, it's always going to be up for discussion among theater lovers, because we all have our favorites and we want to see them again. We all have our opinions as to what's going to sell and what isn't. So I could understand it definitely, how that could have made the minutes. Some good reading there.
I bet. Yeah. And names are named.
Yes.
Who had what opinion on what? I would imagine that's really interesting.
It's a lot of fun. But some of the other things that we've discovered, we have one of our board members is Piers Bateman, and he has been here in Waco for many decades. He's in his 80s now and still serving on our board, and he's been on stage and off, just a really valuable member of the Waco Civic Theater community of volunteers. And so he's just been brilliant to have around. His granddaughter has been starring in several of the productions in the last year. So he sometimes is in the production with her, and he's had several, at least 2 of his grandchildren, three of his grandchildren on that stage, but that I know of. But his son Giles and now daughter-in-law Jennifer met in 1992 in a production of Cinderella on the Waco Civic Theater stage.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's a place of love.
It is a place of love.
Yeah.
Yes. And we found the picture of the 2 of them posing for the camera.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the moment. Was it the moment that they knew each other was the one?
Magic.
Wow.
Theater magic.
Yeah.
Dancing into the future.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm interested in kind of your thoughts on kind of the role of civic theater. I mean, if we think about, in the 20s, maybe you were competing with radio drama and the good old fashioned book, but you think about kind of the changing and evolving role of civic theater in kind of the landscape of the arts and the landscape of entertainment. I'm just interested in your thoughts about that role. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, sitting here on this side of 100 years, a lot of things have come up that could have killed live theater, radio, and then of course television and movies and all of the different forms of entertainment. Video games outdistance all forms of entertainment combined by unbelievable statistics, and I can't even remember them, but I remember reading them because my children are involved in video game design, and thinking, are we really wanting to put a ton of time into this? And here I am, I'm like, well, the thing that I put a ton of time into, you are going to be so far surpassed in people's attention wanting to go towards this form of entertainment. So things like that could have squashed live theater, but it does not die. It will not die, because what that represents is a group of people coming together to share a moment in a space, live, in the moment, and collectively. And we just, as human beings, are constantly looking for connection with each other. And I think live theater, more than any other form of entertainment, really allows for that moment of human connection in a way that nothing else does. And that's why we keep buying tickets. We keep signing up to come and see another story told, even if it's a story that we've seen already. So in the last 100 years, it could have folded for so many different reasons, but it didn't, because we keep wanting to come together and tell stories. The other thing about a community theater is everybody wants to be there. There's someone recently told me, someone in the movie industry said that sometimes they shoot a film and there are people who would rather be somewhere else on set, but at a theater we all are excited to show up every single night after night, and especially in a community theater, because we all have day jobs, and then we want to go and spend our time together, again, focusing on connecting with each other and making something, a piece of art collectively. So that's really valuable. But as our society and time passes and different things become important to us, the theater is a really beautiful place to be able to tell some of those stories, to be able to lead our society through changes in how we should be looking at the world. And it's a beautiful and sometimes a gentle reminder of who we are as humans and how we can come together in a way that treats each other a little bit better and with a little bit more understanding, with a little bit more empathy. And it's just an art form that we all have that moment together. Mm-hmm. I think that's what is really incredibly valuable about that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I, in that answer, you were talking about kind of what's happening and the value of what's happening in doing the production itself, mm-hmm. but also the value of what's happening in the audience.
Yes.
And kind of seeing the production.
Yes.
And I would think particularly that value in the production itself, that sort of shared effort towards creative effort is mm-hmm. something that's kind of timeless and maybe harder to find now than it may have been in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, we are. We are sort of separate in mm-hmm. The way that we choose to use our time. We really kind of put up fences and walls, and we stay within them. We don't have that village mentality much anymore. Mm-hmm. Even knocking on your neighbor's door is seen as suspicious. Mm-hmm. So finding opportunities for connection is becoming rarer. Mm-hmm. So buying a ticket and showing up to a theatrical presentation is one of those ways that you can continually do that. Mm-hmm. There's an energy that is shared that is really hard to pinpoint and hard to measure. And I teach voice to theater students at Baylor University. And I tell my students all the time, there's a lot of what I'm going to try and explain to you that is really hard to explain. And it's hard for us to measure or quantify. And yet that energy in the room is palpable. And the way you give that energy to other people is you can't put a box around it, but mm-hmm. it's there. And if you hold it in and you don't give it, we know. And when you share that vulnerability and you give of yourself that way, we definitely feel it. And so those are the moments that we keep doing this for.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there's plenty to do, but I mean, as a historian, I love the fact that you found these old blueprints. You're going to present those in the space, and you're doing. So I'm interested. I want to ask you as a historian, mm-hmm. why look into the past? I mean, there's plenty to worry about with the next production and
that's true.
And casting and production and staging and all the things that I don't even know to begin to worry about that would be on your plate to kind mm-hmm. of think about. I'm interested in kind of your effort to think about the past of the theater a bit, and maybe what motivates that. What's the mm-hmm. value you see in it, that sort of thing.
Well, part of it, we are a nonprofit. We rely on people's donations, and I'm constantly asking the question: what does motivate people? What motivates them to give to this nonprofit and not that nonprofit? I've been involved in a lot of different nonprofits and fundraising for them, and every one of them is worthy in so many ways. Mm-hmm. So why this one? And that's part of the reason when you look into the past and you see how many years we have been at this, mm-hmm. How many ways that we have told these stories to each other and shared these moments with each other. It's just so worthy. It's such a it's not only fun, it is fun. That's another thing I tell my students: if it's not fun, why are you doing this? Yes. Don't do it if it's not fun. There's nobody's relying on us for their medical, attention or anything like that. This should be fun, right? Yeah. And so why is it fun? Well, that collective energy again. So part of the reason for the deep dive is to connect Waco with this sense of history and saying, mm-hmm. let's keep it going. Let's do another 100 years. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's donation driven because we rely on these donations, but also it's anchoring. It's anchoring for people who, especially after the last few years in a very isolating and eye-opening world events, we need something to anchor us, and the past or the history or the sense of history or the sense of something shared collectively is anchoring. So I've enjoyed it. I wanted to I love seeing where I live and how did it get this way.
Yeah. And it's a distinctive, right? I mean, it's one of the things that makes this place different.
Very.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how many volunteer hours if you take all those years, and I mean, because it's all volunteers for
Exactly.
the most part. So that's really amazing, the sweat equity
Yes.
that so many citizens have put into making the theater what it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been involved with Waco Civic since about 2016, both on stage and off. And I was just telling someone this morning about, I think it was 2018, I did the costumes for Shakespeare in Love. And that was a lot of research and a lot of sewing.
Yeah.
A lot of sewing. And I think more than any other production, I put more hours into that one than anything else. But, I would wake up in the morning, put food in the middle of my sewing table and just graze on it as I sewed all day long. Just to make these really fun and historic costumes. Again, if it's not fun, don't do it. And I had a great time.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of volunteer hours, and I'm not the only one. There are people who pour their blood, sweat, and tears into this because they really do love it. Just there's just nothing quite like it.
Yeah. And again, in an age where volunteerism is changing and what people do with their volunteer time, and people seem to be busier than they used to be in the past. And
yes.
So that's amazing that you continue to rally the troops there to do great work and great productions.
And we couldn't do it without them. Of course, you don't put on these productions with one or two people. It takes a whole team of very dedicated individuals. So we're so lucky to have a huge pool to draw from, because there's a lot of people in Waco who really, really love putting on theater. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping we can also see some of the images from these old playbills and things like that.
Yes.
Those would be really interesting.
Yeah, we're trying to unearth all of those. Yeah. We've asked our volunteers to give us videos and pictures and all these things from past productions, and of course those are a little bit more recent. But I've even been trying to, in our age of Facebook, where people are somewhat readily available to be contacted, John Tennis Anderson, for example, and willing to answer back when you message them. So I've been trying to hunt down members of the Fort family, and Google is a great source for that. But they've since moved to a different part of Texas. So I've seen where Foster and Jean's children and grandchildren have moved to, and I'm trying to hunt down some of those. So if Wacoans, if you know anybody from the Fort family that could furnish us with some pictures, that would be great.
Please, contact me, get in touch with Kelly. Definitely do that. Yeah. I'll ask that question. I mean, if you want, if the average Wacoan is listening to this, what would you tell them about how can they support? How can they help?
Well, I think sharing stories is top of my list. A lot of people have been involved over the years. And even when I go to the Waco, Texas History and Pictures, I've seen posts from people saying, my mother used to play for the melodramas, and does anyone have pictures of her? And there's a lot of requests on there looking for, hey, does anyone remember the so-and-so or something that's happened? And I'd love to find a picture of that woman for her daughter, because she was involved in these melodramas that Waco Civic Theater used to do year after year. And that's a funny story too, because Bob Schmidt was our most often he was the one playing the villain in all of these melodramas.
He was typecast.
He was, I guess, and he had his black mustache and a tall black hat, and he would play, the quintessential villain. Of course, a melodrama is always going to have a stock character.
He's the
selection.
Snidely Whiplash.
Exactly. Well, the legend is that our theater ghost is Bob Schmidt.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay.
So apparently, I don't know if it's accurate or not. I don't know if you believe in ghosts or not.
Yeah,
but
have you had any encounters with
I
this?
have not. Okay. I have not. I've only heard tell.
Okay.
But Bob Schmidt apparently is our theater ghost. And so for someone to love it that much.
Yeah. Yeah, come to Waco Civic. You'll never want to leave, or you'll fall in love. Who knows?
Or you'll fall in love.
Yeah,
Yes, right.
who knows? There's a lot going on over there.
And they're not the only ones. Other people have met on that stage, and they actually had their wedding in the theater.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there an effort now to kind of you talked about reconfiguring the theater in the original design?
Yes.
I mean, is that a hope that the theater will return? Obviously there's things we don't want to give up that that we have now that they didn't have in the 50s. But as far as the design of it, I mean, is there a hope to return that, at least the performance space?
Yes, absolutely. Because it was, again, so versatile. We really enjoy how many ways you can reconfigure that space for the audience to have a different experience every time. If it were up to me and entirely up to me, I would want to provide a place where every single time someone walks through the door, they know they're in for something special, something incredibly, like different from the last time they walked through the door.
Yeah.
So I love to reconfigure the space that way. Obviously we need donations for that. We need to be able to raise the money for renovations. One of the things that definitely was adequate in Paul Baker's time, which is no longer adequate, is our restroom facilities.
Yeah.
That's not fun to try and fundraise for something like that. But when you're standing in line,
but there's always naming opportunities.
Exactly.
This urinal brought to you by.
Brought to you by.
Yeah. So my last name is Sloan, and the Sloan Valve Company is on every urinal I've ever used. And I don't think they're my people, but if they are, I need to make contact because they're the flesh kings of Alabama. Sloan. But yeah, there's naming opportunities. I would think in that case. Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah. And maybe a donor who's listening, and be great to have the Paul Baker stage endowed.
Exactly.
To redo the space. That would be awesome.
It would be wonderful. And exactly. And Paul Baker was so important to this community and then on to the Dallas community as well. His daughter started the Dallas Children's Theater. And so there's just a lot of legacy there, beginning like lots of origins here in Waco. And we're just so privileged to have the after effects of someone with so much genius.
Yeah.
Just genius.
Yeah. Really was a light, creative light in town, definitely. Well, appreciate your leadership of Waco Civic Theater, your volunteer hours that you're kind of pouring into the theater. I appreciate your appreciation for the history of the theater, because I think that is one of the things that makes it so valuable. It's not only what's going on next season, but it's the community can rely upon it as an outlet for the arts. And so that's wonderful. So anything else you want to make sure you get in here?
Well, just visit our website if you want to see more. If you want, we'll be making changes to that too, so that it'll reflect our very exciting. We want to kind of anchor everything into that 1920s vibe, so that it feels a little old Hollywood and a little bit of our origin story as well. So lots of changes will be made to our website and to even our lobby in the next few weeks. But please come and check us out at wacocivictheater.com and buy tickets. It's going to be an epic season coming up. So we're excited.
So a fantastic history and a bright future. So thank you, Kelly.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Waco History Podcast. Like what you heard? Subscribe, rate, and review our show on iTunes so we can reach more listeners. You can find show notes and info on every episode at wacohistorypodcast.com, and more info on Waco's past at wacohistory.org. Our theme music, used with permission, is Cross the Brazos at Waco, performed by the late Billy Walker. For more info on Billy's music, go to billywalker.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. This has been a Rogue Media Network production.